Hello, my name is Larissa, and I would like to talk about the 5 levels of the soul according to Hebrew mysticism, Kabbalah, the 5 levels of the soul, then the 5 different worlds, or Olamot, and the 5 levels of interpretation of the Torah, or the Bible, or any written text, and even of life in the universe. So let's start with the 5 levels of the soul. So according to Kabbalah, the soul has 5 different names. There's something that I love about the Hebrew mysticism. There's many things about Kabbalah that I love. But there's one thing that I absolutely love is that it has so many different names for spiritual concepts and places. It's sort of like the container store for spiritual matters. And I love that about Kabbalah. So according to Kabbalah, the soul is viewed not the way we see it in the West, that we see it like, the soul and then the body and then the mind. No. The soul is viewed as inhabiting 5 different levels, sort of like a hand that puts on a glove and each finger inhabits one part of the glove. So the first level of the soul is the soul that lives in the body, because a body that has life in it is animated. That's why it's animated, because it's anima, soul. So the part of the soul that lives in the body is called the Nefesh. The Nefesh is the part of the soul that lives in the body. Then we have the part of the soul that inhabits the psyche, that lives in the psyche. And that part of the soul is called the Ruach. And it lives in the psyche, meaning our thoughts and our emotions, not just the thoughts. So the Ruach lives in that part of the human experience. Then, above that, it is the soul, the way we know it, the soul, which is called the Neshamá, according to the Kabbalists. The Neshamá is that level that we call the soul, and then that is, more ethereal, and that's the one we call the soul. And Neshamá has the same root of Neshamá, which means breath. So a poetic interpretation of the Torah, when they say that God poured his breath into the nostrils of man, of humankind, what it's saying is that it poured a neshima, which is connected to the neshamá. So our soul is that divine breath that God puts into us. That's the neshama. Then above the neshamá, we have the Haiah. The Haiah is a place, according to the Kabbalists, where many souls merge. So that's a higher level where we connect with a lot of souls. And then above it, we have the Iehidah, which is where all the souls merge. And it's right before all the souls then merge in the mind of God, in the infinite. So Nefesh, the part of the soul that inhabits the body. Ruach is the part of the soul that is in the psyche, in the mind and emotions, in the thoughts and emotions. Then the Neshamá, which is connected to the Neshima, the breath, the soul as we know it. Then the Haiah, when the soul starts to merge with other souls. And then the Iehidah, when they are about to the last stop before we all merge and converge in the divine. So apart from the 5 levels of the soul, we have the 5 different worlds or universes. In Hebrew, they're called Olam or Olamot is the plural. I don't speak Hebrew, but some words, and they're so beautiful. So the first world, not the first or second, but the first one that we're going to talk about is called Asiah. Asiah is the world of tangible matters, the things that we see with our senses. Then we have the world of Yetzirah. Then we have the world of Briah. Then we have the world of Atzilut. And then we have the world, the Adam Kadmon. And then above it, it's the infinite. So when the infinite created our universe, the portion of the infinite that sort of like gives that pours its breath into our universe is called the Adam Kadmon, because the infinite is infinite, but there's a portion of it, even though there's no time or space in the infinite, but the portion of it that infuses, that gives its breath to our universe is called Adam Kadmon. Then the world of Atzilut, then the world of Briah, then the world of Yetzirah, and then the world of Asiah. So the part of the soul that lives in our bodies that we talked about before, which is called the Nefesh, lives in the world of Asiah, in the world of physical matter. Then the part of the soul that is called the Ruach, that lives in our psyche, in our thoughts and emotions, that part lives in the world of Yetzirah. Then we have the Neshamá, which, what we associate with the soul. The Neshamá lives in the world of Briah, in the Olam Briah. Then we have the Haiah, which is where many souls merge. That part of the soul lives in the world of Atzilut. And then the Iehidah lives in the Adam Kadmon, which, like I said, is the part of the infinite that pours its breath into our universe. So the Iehidah. So Nefesh lives in Asiah, Ruach lives in Yetzirah, the Neshamá lives in Briah, Haiah lives in Atzilut, and then the Iehidah lives in the Adam Kadmon. And we all live in the infinite, because without God we wouldn't exist. And the infinite also lives in us, because that's how we live. And so, connected with the 5 levels of the soul and the 5 different worlds, or Olamot, the 5 universes, there's also something else, which is the 4 levels of interpretation of the Torah. There's actually 5, but the 5th one is hidden. But the 4 levels of interpretation of the Torah, or the Bible, or any text, or even life and the universe, they're called the PARDES. So PARDES is an acronym for PRDS, and then they fill it up. They put vowels in the middle to make it more pronounceable. So the PARDES, PRDS, stands for, the first level is the P, which stands for Peshat. Peshat is the literal interpretation of a text. We read it, and what we read is what it is. So if we read, a man went to a well, that's what it means. Literally, that's what it means. A man went to a well. That's it, Peshat. Then we have in the Pardes, we have the R, which is the Remez. The Remez is more of the intellectual interpretation of a text. What people interpret when they read something. Sort of like the way people interpret the Constitution. They sort of interpret its phraseology, and different people could have different interpretations. And it stays in the intellectual level, but there's still many different interpretations. So the same thing applies to the Torah. The Remez is that level of interpretation. Then we have the 3rd level in the Pardes, which is the D, which is the Derash. The Derash is that level where there are parables and metaphors and symbols and allegories. And this is the level that Jesus used a lot, which was brilliant because his language was filled with parables, and they are very profound. They express deep and profound spiritual truths, but at the same time expressed with such simplicity that could be understood by anybody, because it was coming from the heart and soul and speaking to the heart and souls of people. So that, apart from so many things, Jesus is Jesus. But particularly the way of communicating the Derash is sort of like a caress of the language. It's not direct, and it's more poetic in its essence, and more ethereal. That is the level of the Derash. And then we have the S in the Pardes, which is the Sod. And the Sod is the secret. Secret is sort of like, when we read the Torah or any other text or life, there is a level where it's just our communication with God. It's where God whispers into our ears something that it's just for our souls, a message that only our souls can decipher. That is the Sod. It's sort of like, the fingerprint of the message of God into our souls, that we all have a different message. And then the Sod of Sod, it's a secret of secrets. It's sort of like we are eavesdropping in the divine mind. And of course, very few people have been able to do that, but that's like, the goal of a human existence. Is sort of like that's why Einstein said, all I want to know are God's thoughts. The rest are details, He was a mystic in that sense, that he was trying to eavesdrop into the mind of God. I call him a scientist instead of a scientist, but I like that word, because he was trying to explore the secrets of God. So that's the Sod of Sod. So PARDES, P, Peshat, R, Remez, D, Derash, and S, Sod, and then Sod of Sod. So it would be PARDES. And so now we're going to combine the levels of the soul, the worlds, and the levels of interpretation. So the world of Asiah, which is where the Nefesh, the part of the soul that inhabits the body, the Nefesh lives in Asiah, and it's connected to the level of the Peshat, which is literal. Literal interpretation is what our bodies, what our senses see. Very literal interpretation. Asiah, Nefesh, Peshat. Then we have the world of Yetzirah, which is where our Ruach, the part of our soul that lives in our psyche, it's called the Ruach, and that it's compatible with the level of interpretation of the Remez. The Remez, which is the intellectual interpretation. So the Remez, connected with Ruach, Remez and Ruach, and they live in the world of Yetzirah. Then we have the World of Briah, the Olam Briah, and that is where the Neshamá lives. And that is connected with the Derash, with the level of interpretation that is parables and metaphors. That's why it's more poetic, more ethereal, because it's connected with the Neshamá and it lives in the world of Briah. It's becoming more intangible. Then we have the world of Atzilut, and the level of the soul that lives in Atzilut, that is called the Haiah, is connected with the level of interpretation of the Sod, the secret. So the Haiah, the secret, and the world of Atzilut, they live sort of at the same sphere. That is where, we really have to make an effort to tune ourselves into the secrets that God has for our souls. And then at the level of the Iehidah, which is where all the souls converge, then there is the Adam Kadmon, lives in the Adam Kadmon, and that is the level of the Sod of Sod, the secret of secrets. That's what they say, that no ear has ever heard and no eye has ever seen the things that the man who listens to God can do. Because the man who listens, the woman that listens to God is eavesdropping in the divine mind and then downloading the messages of God into our world. That's it. Thank you so much for watching.